All right. Another special guest today. First time on Pints Politics. I don't know if you're one of our two listeners, but I'm sure you have more important things to do.
Yeah.
But our state superintendent of education,
Ellen Weaver.
Great
Welcome.
to be with you guys today. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
and
you
for the
for coming
record,
on.
I'm not drinking during business hours.
No.
So I'm a very sober superintendent.
How's your
Aquafina for
Aquafina?
you.
That's right.
Yep.
I've got my water.
I've got
so-
Aquafina in my red cup.
Yeah, red Solo cup. That's right. That's right. So, government's an opportunity to bring people together. We talked about that before. And funny little side note is when I got this job 2 years ago, Ellen and I knew each other when we were college age. What was that, about 10 years ago,
Yeah,
maybe?
about 10 years ago. Yeah.
You know everybody
Yesterday.
up here from college, eh?
And I continually run into, because I'm an alum of Carolina, I continually run into people. I ran into an old friend from college. I haven't seen him in 25 years. Run into him at a restaurant, Halls.
Yeah.
Last night. Hadn't seen him in 25 years. But anyway, good to see you.
Great to see you too.
You staying busy?
A little bit, yeah, yeah. K-12 education is nothing if not go, 24/7. I always laugh because sometimes people assume, even at the state level, that you're running on the school year calendar. And so they say, oh, you got a real
right.
easy summer. I'm like, no, because during the summer is when we start working on all the stuff that you guys just sent us during the legislative session.
That's
so
the implementation.
The implementation phase. That's exactly
that's
right.
right.
So,
That's right.
so it's a 24/7 round the clock job.
Oh, and I can't imagine the difficulties and the challenges that you run into not only year to year, but day to day. Back in Rock Hill in our home districts, we always will talk about our school board. Folks like, hey, we need to find someone to run for school board. Everyone runs, right? Everyone runs out the door. And because it seems to be just an issue that, a lot of people have opinions on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I can't imagine like what you have to deal with on a state level trying to bring all these people together in a room. And
I think it's very difficult as a conservative in the education space because, honestly, education was the first socialistic program that we really implemented on a national scale. And you're trying to make sure every child is educated. Mm-hmm. And what our focus is on the hearts and minds of the children.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult. So you'll see some of the most conservative people get on the school board, and then whenever they start, some of the things they advocate for, they get bashed. So it's very difficult to remain a conservative. You're one of the few that keep that conservative marker in the educational space.
Well, it's something that is, it's a tough space to be in, like you said, but I truly think it's a joyful space to be in. And people ask me all the time, how do you like the job? And I tell them, honest to God, I absolutely love what I get to do every day because like you just said, Brandon, it's about the hearts and the minds of the future generation. And we actually just created a brand new logo for the State Department of Education. We had never really had one that was customized to our department before, and we chose our resilient palmetto tree, right, which is the emblem of hope and resilience here in our state, and we grounded it in a book because a great education is truly the soil out of which our shared future grows, right? And so I can't imagine a more purposeful way to spend my life. And there's a lot of noise, but what I have come to find, and I think you all probably have found this serving an elected office too, that a lot of times the noise just doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
I haven't learned that one yet.
One of the things that we've been working on that I actually brought you all some nice color copies of here today is a strategic plan for our department, because what this does is it puts the big picture on one page, and it's something that, even as stuff is getting thrown at us left and right, it keeps us focused on what matters. And for me, that's all about focusing on the fundamentals. And first and foremost, we have to make sure all of our kids can read. That is the foundational skill that kids have to have.
Yeah, and we were talking about this before we hit the record button. I was in a classroom, and it was with the Institute of Medicine and Public Health. They were sort of giving us an update on what's going on with the just general health, and we were really focused on rural health and then young mothers, right? And one of the non-medical determinants of health was third grade reading level.
Yes.
And I just literally was like, really, does everything always fall back to how are you reading in third grade, But the data shows that if a child is at level or better reading at third grade, not only is your success in life better, exponentially, but also your health outcome, which is a wild thing to consider, but there's all those correlating pieces of data that support it.
Yeah. And I truly think literacy is how we break generational cycles of poverty, how we create opportunity and set kids up for their long-term path to success. And I've been so thankful in my 2 years as superintendent. It was officially 2 years last weekend, which is kind of hard to believe. Yeah, survived 2 years. But the General Assembly has been such an amazing partner with us in this literacy work. The most important piece is that our teachers have the tools in their toolkit that they need in order to be able to teach science the way that we now know, or reading rather, the way we know that brain science tells us it has to be taught. And, in a lot of ways, it's just back to basics. It's what you and I would have called phonics when we were growing up. And it's obviously more than just phonics, but phonics is a huge piece of the different pieces of your brain that you can actually see light up on an MRI that have to be connected in order for a student to be a great reader. Now, I don't have to tell you guys, because I think all of us were probably born talking. Our brains are pre-wired to talk. They are not pre-wired to read. And so you have to do systematic, explicit instruction to teach kids how to read.
Now, is that the bill that Senator Johnson worked on? Was it Science of Reading?
Yeah, exactly. So you all in the budget 2 years ago actually funded us to do what is called letters training. It is not a curriculum. It's a professional development for teachers. And this is something that they did in Mississippi. So, Mississippi has dragged behind to the rest of the country for years and years. And we used to always say, thank God for Mississippi, right?
Yes.
Well, they are closing achievement gaps with some of their most vulnerable student populations and are seeing some of the greatest gains in reading in the nation. And I said, by golly, if they can do it in Mississippi, I know we can do it here in South Carolina.
I can't even spell Mississippi.
I think Mississippi's jumped up from 50th to like 44th or something, right? And
they've made huge gains, and it's all about investing in teachers. And so that's what you all have allowed us to do. Every single K-3 teacher in South Carolina now is being trained in the science of reading. And it's one of those things where I firmly believe in leading by example. I said, I'm not going to make our teachers do something I'm not willing to spend my own time doing. So I've been going through this letters training myself. So if you ever want to just geek out on your free time and talk about the science, the brain science behind how all this stuff works, it's pretty incredible. But we're seeing really encouraging results. I love talking to teachers about this because people go into education because they have a heart for kids. And they want to help the students that they serve. And so when we're giving these teachers these tools, they might have started out and said, oh my gosh, it's one more thing to have to do with my time. But like once they get into it and they understand things that no one has ever told them before, they come to me and they say, I now can diagnose my students and give them what they need in a way that I was never able to do it before. And a lot of times they're actually saying, I feel guilty because I didn't know this. And I have to tell them, I said, you know what? It's when you know better, you do better. And you know better now, and so we're going to do better.
I tell you, man,
pretty important.
Yeah.
Teachers are, I sometimes feel like our teachers are unfairly attacked. I feel like they are giving way too much on their plate at a time. And I think the one of the worst things to happen to education, in my opinion, was that reliance on the federal grants to fund it. Act 388 has been a huge detriment, in my opinion, to education in South Carolina.
That's one of your favorite pieces of legislation. He has it framed on his wall in his office.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting that a lot of people don't know. Here in South Carolina, if you look at our state funding, so we have federal funding, state funding, and local funding, right? Only about 8% of our total state K-12 spending is federal. I would tell you though that probably 50 to 60% of the cost of compliance goes along with that 8% of the federal budget.
That's one of the things I used to say about Winthrop. Like, how do you bring in a rock climbing wall? Now you got to pay somebody to stay there the whole time and sit here and man this for whenever people want to go rock climbing.
Well, and so that's why I'm really hopeful with the incoming, administration. There's a lot of noise about the elimination of the Department of Education. I frankly just don't think they have the votes in the U.S. Senate probably to do that. But I do think that we can take some significant steps towards simplifying the the federal funding, creating more of a block grant formula that would
Right.
give us more flexibility at the state to serve our low income and special needs students in the way we know they need to be
Yeah,
served.
100%. The best government's local. I think, just being relatively
Government works
conservative.
best closest to the people.
Yeah,
And
100%.
education was something that was always intended for the state and local communities to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
but that's true. You know, Brandon, you made mention that teachers get painted with a broad brush a lot of times.
Yeah.
You know, there might be a bad actor. There might be a teacher who's struggling or just doesn't, you know, classroom's not for them. But they are a great, I mean, Ellen, you said it. They have a heart for kids.
Yeah.
I've never met a teacher ever that said, man, I really want to get in this teaching gig so I can make a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I think it's important that we partner and teachers know when we talk about school choice, that's not an anti-teacher
Right.
issue, right?
Right.
It's being able to collaborate with the administrators and the educators and teachers and even the assistants. You know, I have 2 special needs boys, angels, man.
Yeah.
Who take care of those kids.
Yeah.
And
And
help
really,
support them.
if anything, school choice is actually a pro-teacher policy because you're creating a marketplace for teacher talent. And like you said, I have never talked to a teacher who said they went into it for the money. But
Yeah.
that said, they still deserve to be paid as a professional. And that's something that, you know, I'm really proud of the work that we've done in partnership with you all in the General Assembly and
Right.
with the governor. Since 2018, 2019, we have increased starting teacher pay 47%.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we've gone from
York County's
32,000.
paying the most.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, and that gets to the point I'd love to pick up on too, that you both said that we've asked our teachers to be everything to everybody, and they just can't be. We've got a
Right.
lot of societal problems that are happening right now. The breakdown of families, the breakdown of a lot
100%.
of community organizations and institutions that used to really support our social fabric.
Right.
And that burden falls on our teachers. And so I think, you know, one of the things that is most important that I'm working on that's not maybe something you would think of as a traditional part of my job is really going out and trying to raise awareness in our business community, in our faith community, in our nonprofit community about how they can plug in really concrete ways to come be a mentor in our local
Right.
schools, or
Yeah.
even just sit in the lunchroom during the lunchtime so that the teachers can have their planning period. I mean, like, that means something to our teachers to know that our local communities have their back.
Yeah, 100%. That's a big thing in Rock Hill and in York County at large. I mean, we have a couple of nonprofits that are very active in our school district to help support teachers, bring them snacks, bring them, you know, like a coffee bar. They get
Yep.
set up. Our church does the same thing with a local middle school that's right down the street, where once a month, we have a group of volunteers that go in and feed them hot breakfasts. Let them know that I think we're there for about 4 hours, and we just make sure that they can come and take a load off, and we feed them hot coffee, you know,
I
things
love
of that nature.
that. I absolutely love that. Thank you for doing that. Thank the folks up in your community for doing
Mm-hmm.
that, because that investment of time, I mean, we all write our check, you know, to pay our taxes each year, and that's an important part of supporting our schools, but the
Right.
most valuable resource that any of us have is our time.
Yeah.
And it's when we invest that time that we really make that person-to-person connection. We let our teachers know that they're valued and supported. And I'll tell you the other thing that I hear from teachers most often in terms of why they're leaving the classroom is they feel like nobody has their back.
Right.
That they're not supported in
That's the
disciplining
number one thing I
students.
heard.
Yeah.
The lack
yeah.
of administrative support.
Yeah, and a lot of that is tied back to bad federal policy, which again I hope we can see change
Right.
under the new administration. But I think a lot of it too is really practical, and that's why I am so thankful again for the budget proviso that came through this last year in terms of creating a cell phone free school day in our schools. We're calling it Free to Focus, and it was fully implemented at the beginning of this year, 2025, and I've gotten such great feedback from our teachers so far. I got a message from one teacher said it was my best work day ever.
Oh, wow. So for the 2 listeners, Tell them about this policy.
Yeah, so this was part of what we call a budget proviso, which is a little piece of policy that gets tucked into the budget that y'all pass every year.
Yeah.
But what it did was it directed the State Board of Education and my Department of Education to create a model policy that districts then would have to adopt. And the gist of it is that the cell phone has to be off and away for the entire school day. Now, a kid can have it in their backpack, so it can be on their physical person. It's not that it can't be on the school campus at all, but it's that it has to be off and away for the entire school day. And there is so much data tied to the rise in negative mental health outcomes, and it is directly correlated to the
Screen
adoption of the cell phone.
100%.
Yeah. There's an awesome book. If you guys haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend it. It's called The Anxious Generation.
Yep.
Yeah, it's incredible what it lays out there in terms of the mental health struggles that our students have,
Right.
and how you can really, there's no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet, but screen time is a huge piece of it.
100%. I think that magic number was around 3 hours. Like if you're having daily screen time 3 hours and over,
That became my one of my focuses as I'm traveling around talking about mental health, and I'm talking to these teens about anxiety. Now, I will tell you through the other states that I've traveled to, whenever there was cell phone bans enacted within those school districts, what I was most surprised at, because I can't tell you how many parents reached out just mad that their kid's not going to have their cell phone.
I'm like, they're at school.
And they all want to use school shootings or something like that as a reason, saying, oh, I've got to be able to get a hold of my kid. But whenever I talked to those teens, I never spoke to a teen that did not like the cell phone ban once it was implemented.
Yeah.
And they talked about how their grades, how their social life, and these were kids that would actually interact with you instead of sitting on the phone the entire time.
Yeah, and so that's why we have called this the free to focus policy, because I think we need to talk about this in terms of what we are giving students, not what we're taking away from students, right? We are giving them the freedom to focus on their education.
It's a marketing background.
Yeah, right. Well, so we talk a lot, or we hear a lot about chronic absenteeism, right? Like kids after COVID who just haven't showed back up to school in the same way that they were before COVID. That's a problem, but I'm even more worried about kids that show back up but are absent sitting in the classroom because they're looking at their phone the entire time, right? And so, I mean, like that, the academic outcomes go up, school discipline incidents go down. I was just listening to an article this morning about, how kids today have been told they're living in this like reality TV universe, and they are staging fights. People are getting seriously hurt. There are people who have been killed. I mean, like it's really a scary thing. And so if we can create a space where kids are free to focus on their learning, free to focus on their friendships, that face-to-face interaction,
social skills, like real life interactive.
Real life skills.
Correct.
And I mean, like you look at like how polarized our country is right now. The only way we solve that is talking to people face to face.
Yeah, right.
Well, or getting rid of algorithms.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah.
But I mean, you talk about getting back to the basics, and that's just one of those things where, I mean, you're talking to a dad of 3 kids. My daughter just got a cell phone, and it was a fast rule when she was 5. And, it was challenging. She would have ballet or some sort of, practice or activity, and all of her friends from about 7 years old on all had a device, whether it was an iPad or a cell phone, and they were all doing their individual thing, or they were playing interactive games
Together.
and it would leave her out.
Yeah.
And so I always challenged her. I said, Emma, look, you're growing up in the real world. I want you to develop social skills. Take Uno cards. Take whatever you need, but get those kids off those devices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the anxious generation, Jonathan Haidt actually features a school from here in South Carolina up in Pickens County.
Oh, wow.
And a 4th grade teacher there started an after school play club. And the only rule of play club is you can't hurt other people. Other than that, you go be adults, don't interfere with your play. They let kids be kids. And they said it is unbelievable what that has done for the academic and social outcomes for the kids kids in that school, just because we actually learn by playing when
Right.
we're little, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't think we understand how good we had it kind of growing up on the cusp of this like technology
Everything. Oh,
revolution. Yeah.
I mean, everybody makes the college jokes about, man, I'm glad those cell phones weren't around, you know, so someone could take a picture of me doing something silly, or what you would do when you're 20 and being an idiot. But
Right.
yeah, take it back even further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Like I was out riding my bike,
Yeah.
playing with my friends, you know?
Well, I just read another study. They were talking about how kids just being able to the amount of distance kids used to travel away from their home unsupervised.
Yeah.
oh, that's what I was going to say.
And how it has shrank to a very small area, and they're linking that to a lot of anxiety as well.
Yeah.
And they're saying the best thing to do, and it's hard for a parent
Let 'em
because
wander.
we're so worried, but your kid learns better social skills just feeling like they are free, even
That
if they're
sense of
one block away.
independence. Yep.
That independence, and it
Yep.
does so much for their development.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked whenever I was reading that. But yeah, it's amazing. And I think all of us as parents, all of us as lawmakers, policymakers, as we all just simply want to make things better, but we don't always get it right.
Yeah.
Well, and
But
I
whenever we see these problems, we've got to be able to go
I
back
will
and
say
fix them.
I'm that guilty parent, you know, of my letting my kids only go certain where I can still see them and those types of things. And then, you know, that harkens back to memories of when we were growing up. You know, my mom kicked us out of the house
And said, "I'll see you at dinner time."
when the street lamps come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
You better
Yeah.
be back. You
Yeah.
know, and we were playing in ditches, running in, you know, bicycles, football, whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just mad because my 6-year-old's got that motorcycle now, so now I got to walk a little bit further to go find him.
yeah, that's right. Well, what else are you working on this year? You got any other things, I mean, you want to talk about, or things that probably you're going to have to, you know, maybe we can help you with, or anything that's going on?
Absolutely. So reading is obviously kind of the foundation of everything else, but we also are working really hard on math. We've seen across the country, not just here in South Carolina, that there's been a huge backslide in math, especially after COVID, and we weren't exactly knocking it out of the park before COVID.
Right.
As a nation, I mean, we were losing ground competitively to other countries, right? And so we're in the process right now of rebooting math education and really kind of following the same playbook for math that we've been doing for literacy, which is investing in that teacher knowledge and then ensuring that teachers have really high quality instructional grade level materials that they are teaching kids. Because a lot of times, you know, we hear from teachers that they are just slap wore out from having to go curate their own lessons. And we know that in looking at a lot of the things that are often curated from, you know, Teachers Pay Teachers or other internet sites, just Google.
Oh, right.
It's stuff that's not really high quality and it's not really on grade level.
Okay.
And the only way we get kids where they need to be so that a diploma in South Carolina is worth the piece of paper that it's written on is have high expectations of rigor. And so these high quality instructional materials, they take a load off of our teachers because they come prepackaged with lesson plans that the teachers can pick up. They can customize them how they want to customize them, but it gives them a roadmap that they don't have to create from scratch.
That's
right?
nice.
Yeah.
Imagine walking in and someone just handing you a folder saying, "Here's 100 bills for you to choose from."
Right, exactly. And we want to do everything we can to make it as easy on our teachers as possible. So that's one of the big things we're working on is that Palmetto Math Project. This is going to be a really exciting year, 2 years here in South Carolina because the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution is coming up in 2026.
Yep.
And so this year, 2025, is actually the year when we rewrite our social studies standards. So every 7 years, our standards are up for a cyclical review. So the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education works in partnership with the Education Oversight Committee. It's a big process, but I'm really excited about that because I think it's going to give us a really awesome opportunity opportunity to platform so much of the incredible Revolutionary War history that we have here in South Carolina. I love to tell folks, and I'm kind of a history nerd. You're getting me on my catnip here, but
You should have been here for the first guest
Oh,
talking about
really?
Robert Smalls.
oh my goodness, yes, I would have. We talked about the African American history calendar
Yeah.
that we just unveiled last night, as a matter of fact. But the Revolutionary War was started in New England. It was won in the South, here in South Carolina. I
Yeah.
mean, we would not be the America that we all know and love today if it was not for the battles that were won here at Cowpens and Kings Mountain.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And
Lawson's
so,
district.
Up in our neck of
yeah,
woods.
yeah. And so, I mean, I want our students need to know that history. They need to be proud of that history. That is history that can unite us all as Americans. And I think, that's something that we need now more than ever. And that's why I was so honored last night too. So one of the big projects at the Department of Education, it started back in 1989. We do a South Carolina African American history calendar each year. And we talk about distinguished African Americans who have made an impact on our state, on the nation, and even on the world. And so last night we rolled out the new calendar for this year, and it was incredibly special and meaningful because this is actually the 10th anniversary in June of the Emmanuel 9. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years. But in 2017, the calendar actually featured the Emmanuel 9 themselves. This year, for the 10th anniversary, we featured members of their family telling their story and what their journey has been over the last decade. And I've just got to tell you, I'm going to send y'all the YouTube link. It is worth the hour and a half to watch that ceremony that we had last night. The stories of hope and love and resilience that have come out of that terrible, terrible tragedy.
Right. I, being from down that way, I was so proud of how that community supported not only, the families of the victims, but just, when the family members went to Ruth's bond hearing and they basically, they just preached basically the gospel. And I couldn't have done it.
Yeah, I can't do it.
No.
But it was just such a powerful message of love and hope. And you're right.
Yeah. It was incredible, and to think that happened here in South Carolina. And I truly believe, in my personal life, my faith, that God redeems our pain for a purpose. Mm-hmm. And we can't a lot of times see in the midst of the hardship, what that purpose is. Mm-hmm. But 10 years down the road from the horrific shooting, it will never change the tragedy and the horror of what happened, but to know that there can be purpose that comes out of that, reconciliation that comes out of that, love that comes out of that is really incredible. So it makes me proud to be a South Carolinian.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% couldn't have said it better.
We were actually talking to Representative Brandon Cox, and, that's one of the things that he is always pushing for. And, it was his bill to get the Robert Smalls statue on the ground.
Yep.
And he was talking about it, but
he came by the
also
reception
talking
last
about,
night.
Okay. Well, I must have missed these
It's
receptions.
okay.
I don't know
It's
where
okay.
they were.
Well,
It's okay.
so we have judicial candidates canvassing the Blatt building. And so I had a bunch of interviews and trying to get to know these folks.
I was just an LCI forever.
I didn't get out of the office.
But you're right. The fact that we're putting Robert Smalls' statue on the State House grounds is an incredible. We have the beautiful African American memorial that's already there on the grounds. That's just an incredible tribute.
Yeah.
And the reason that happened, and we were talking about it with Cox, but whenever we first got elected, it was about this time last year, we were going to meet Heath and some other freshmen, and it was myself, Carla Schuessler, and Cox. We were walking on the State House grounds.
To tie it back to education.
Okay.
Yeah, but there
a
were
classroom
kids that were taking a tour, and we always make a point to try and go up to the classes whenever we see them and talk to them and try to answer questions. We meet these kids, doing a tour, kind of walk them into the chamber. And as we're sitting there, they loved it, just being able to walk out onto the floor. They felt they had special treatment,
Yeah.
One little girl looked up, and the first question that was asked to me as a State House rep was by this little girl, and she said, "Why aren't there more people that look like me?" And and she's just looking up at the paintings.
Yeah.
And it made such a difference. And I remember whenever we were walking away, Cox was like, we got to fix this.
Yeah.
Something's got to happen. And he had just started reading that Robert Smalls book at that time. And he was like, man, have you read this book? And then next thing you know, is a whole coalition of people
that's fantastic. Well, another really cool piece of African American history in the South Carolina House, if y'all go up the big staircase there to the chamber and look up on the wall, there's a beautiful portrait that hangs there of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. She was an African American educator who was born in a tiny town in Sumter County called Maysville. And she was an incredible civil rights activist. She was friends with Eleanor Roosevelt back in the day. She actually ended up moving to Florida, which is where she started a school that has now become Bethune-Cookman University, a historically black college and university. And so the interesting thing is Florida is trying to steal her from us. They actually, every state in the nation gets 2 statues in the United States Capitol.
That's right.
And Dr. Bethune is one of Florida's statues. And I said, wait a second here.
Really?
She is a South Carolina girl, born and bred.
We've got a Reagan picture hanging up in our chamber.
Yeah, well, that's okay. But she had a beautiful quote that said, the whole world opened to me when I learned how to read. And I have really just taken that as my North Star in this reading conversation that we were having, because it really, that's what we're trying to give our students is the gift of the world. If you can read, you can do anything.
Is reading rainbow still a thing? I used to love that.
It needs to be, right? Yeah. Take a look.
Yeah. And you talk about, it's such a basic concept, right?
Yeah.
But, I never thought about
Pizza Hut, Book It. Like
yes,
you would get
the
pizza
summer reading program. Yeah, exactly.
There were so many reading
It was like a book a month, and
up.
you go to the pizza party if you had all your
Well, and sometimes I think we do this in a lot of things in life, but I think sometimes in education we make things harder than it actually has to be. Like, let's focus on the fundamentals. Let's get back to basics.
Right.
Let's make sure our kids have
too many
literacy
personalities.
skills.
Everyone wants to help, but
Yeah.
it gets too complicated.
Yeah.
I think that's with just about everything in life. But
It
it's
is.
very hard because you have so many passionate people because everyone cares for kids.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to say, hey, we're all rowing the same direction.
Yeah.
Let's
We
try this.
experience that during session every Tuesday through Thursday,
Yes, yeah. Well, the two words that I talk about all the time with my staff, and I'm sure they're sick of hearing it by now, but it's clarity and alignment. You have to have clarity of mission, vision, and purpose, and then you have to align resources to get there. So resources are time, that's money, it's all of this other stuff, and there's so much complication in education that we're doing everything we can to try to create that clarity and alignment. So everywhere I go, I give the same talk. If I'm talking to a Rotary Club, if I'm talking to the superintendents, if I'm talking to whoever I happen to be, whoever I happen to be talking to, it's the same message, because if we can all get on the same page with the same vision, which is the purpose of our education system is to advance student achievement.
Correct.
That is the point of education, right? And if we can all agree that that's our North Star, then we can agree that there are basic things that we all can agree on that we have to do in order to move that forward. And I think this literacy push is something that can bring everyone together from all sides of the aisle, from every community, and so I'm really excited about where we're going as a state. We've got a lot of work to do, but we've got the right people, I think, on the team, and we're going to get it done.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'm sure you and Shannon Erickson have conversations daily.
Yes, all the time.
She leads our education committee.
Yep.
She's doing great work down there.
Yes,
so
she is.
She's going to be a lot of help to you, I'm sure. But also, if we can help you in any way next 2 years, let us know.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Happy to help out in any way
Thanks
that
for joining
I can.
us. We'll have you back soon.
As long as it doesn't require me getting on the education committee.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.